22 of the world's top poker players have each paid $100,000 to play in this Aussie Millions event. And now, only 8 remain. Who is going to leave us tonight with absolutely nothing? And then the others will each take a slice of the $2.2 million cake. But who is going to take the biggest piece?
Eight players gathered at our final table in the Crown Casino. Plenty at stake. In seat 1, Tony G, the loudmouth of poker. He's calmed down, but his game is just as sharp. In seat 2, Gus Hansen, the Great Dane. He'll baffle and bamboozle anyone. In seat 3, it's the American Nam Lee. Next to him in seat 4, one of the greatest poker players to come out of England, it is Sam Trickett. In seat 5, he's quiet, he's intimidating. It's the Russian, Mikhail Smirnov. In seat 6, it's Joe Hasham. He conquered Las Vegas. Can he do the same in his home country? In seat 7, Sorrel Mitzi, who has packed a lot of poker experience into his 26 years. And in seat 8, also fighting out of the United States, it is young Dan Smith. Over 7 hours into this $100,000 buy-in tournament, and we are down to our final table of 8. It's pretty star-studded. Tony G talking away, no surprise there. Gus Hansen raising away, again, no surprise. In fact, the only shock is he's got a decent hand. King Jack offsuit. And we're staring now at our sunglassed Russian contender, Mikhail Smirnov, who's picked up low-suited connectors and aggressively re-raises. Always a bold move against Gus Hansen, even more so when the Great Dane is the chip leader. Two players to the flop, the Russian against the Dane. That's all hearts. Gus Hansen has the Jack of Hearts. Smirnov has only the most distant of straight draws here. But Gus has checked into him and invited him to continue his aggression.
27,500.
It's a smallish bet. How will Hansen interpret it? Decides to see another card. Smirnov did raise pre-flop. Fairly easy for Gus to believe that the Russian has an ace here. And that is how it pans out. Well played to our Russian contender. Blinds 2,500 and 5,000 Aussie dollars. Trickett's card's worth nothing. Now, what is our aggressive Russian going to do with aces? This is pot limit before the flop and no limit afterwards. So it does price a few more players in than might normally get involved. Certainly an exciting format. Tony G with a suited King 10, and that's pretty much the flop you want with a suited King 10. He's made the house, and Smirnov is going to dig his own grave. How deep he digs it will depend. Of course, he can get out of this with an ace. A 10 would give Tony quads. All in and cool. The Russian polite enough to say, nice hand. But he's not dead yet. Tony G doubles up. And Smirnoff feeling cursed by his good luck to get the aces. Nam Lee in the black t-shirt. Sam Trickett in the grey t-shirt. Round to Tony again. On the button, doesn't want to play Queen 3. Gus Hansen picks up a genuine hand. I suppose it has to happen every now and then. And this is ugly for Nam Lee. Pre-flop, he's utterly marmalised by Hansen's jacks, and you'll know Hansen's reputation for playing hinky hands. And this is where all that adventure will pay off for Gus. He re-raises and induces the all-in from Nam Lee, one of our short stacks, and very much in danger of leaving this final table. An 8 would give Nam Lee the straight. But it doesn't come through, and we lose the first of our final tablists. A good run there by Nam Lee. Remember, only the top 4 get paid though. So all the glory, but none of the cash for the youngster. And Gus Hansen adds yet another battlement to that castle in front of him. Dan Smith in the red hat. Hansen relentless. Sam Trickett not over rich in chips right now. Hugely talented. And he makes it 49,000. Gus has been golden so far. He makes the re-raise. Sam Trickett calls. This is very much a coin flip. Trickett marginally in front. Hansen with all those chips, happy to take a 50-50 or thereabouts. Well, it's not 50-50 anymore. Hansen has charged ahead, and Trickett pretty much dead to a 6. That's no good. So they are tumbling like dominoes now, and Gus Hansen, the one who is definitely nudging them out of the room. So it's very much the runaway Dane show at the moment. Gus started with the most chips, and he has swallowed up both the shorter stacks. But you don't win until you've got all the chips. Button raise from Smirnoff. Hashem has the same hand. Re-raises. should be enough to get rid of Sorel Mitzi, who's changed gear a few times in this tournament. Gone into his shell for a while, then come out playing some loosish hands. And this time he goes turtle again.
32 and 65. Thank you.
Another 70,000 for Hashem. Speed poker rules means that Hashem has time pressure as well as the normal strains of playing. And he decides to get out of the way. So excellent aggression once again from the man from the former Eastern Bloc. Tony G enjoying some conversation with other players. Possibly the waitress bringing him his drinks. Hansen charging again. And once again, Smirnoff playing sheriff. Makes the call. Hashem on the button. Very playable hand. Dan Smith not interested in 8-7. And probably happy about that now. Nobody out of this one yet. 2 diamonds for Hansen. Ace for Smirnoff. Hashem has a backdoor flush. Or at least a draw to one. Joe also has perfect position here, but there is going to be some betting in front of him. And it's hefty enough. 33,000 from Hansen. A call from Smirnoff. And Joe realises this is not the moment to get too bold. That gives Hansen a 9. Still has the nut flush draw. More money into the pot from Gus Hansen. Smirnoff, again, flat calls. Over $250,000 in the middle. Smirnoff can only lose this by folding. The fact that he was flat calling may get Gus to suspect that he also had diamonds. And has missed his draw. This is now hefty. Top pair with a jack kicker. There's a school of thought that says that Mikhail Smirnoff may think he has to call, because if he doesn't win this, he won't win the tournament.
I don't think I'm going to win this hand. I do have a pair, though. I have a pair.
And the Russians' instincts, once again, perfect.
He knows how much I lose.
Over $500,000 in chips.
That's why it's not very important.
Flooding towards the Russian, who has suddenly discovered his smile.
For me, it's huge.
Football. I
blinds up to 3 and 6.
For a lot of pride, but not so much money.
3-6.
Believe me, I huge. First prize here, not enough.
Gus has taken a reverse, but still
He knows my best.
very much chipped up. Once again, Smirnov in a position to relieve him of some of those bits of clay. Sorrel Mitzi too. On the button, pocket queens. Hasn't played a great deal of hands. We're still 2 away from the money. And Sorrel Mitzi isn't messing around, all in. Hanson folds, an insta-call from Smirnov with the suited ace-king. So we're off to the races, and can Smirnov win 2 massive pots in a row? Oh, it's a heart. 2 hearts. So an ace, a king, or any heart. Right colour, wrong shape. And it is a heart. Sorrel Mitzi, he waited and waited and waited. But he leaves with nothing. And Mikhail Smirnov has charged ahead of the field. He's made some brave calls. That one was fairly straightforward. But you don't just have to be good, you have to be lucky. So far, everything's working perfectly for the Russian. Dan Smith on the button. Ace 10 suited. Has the pressure of time to make decisions. Also has the pressure of realising we're now on the money bubble. The next person will have spent $100,000 just for the pleasure of sitting near Tony G. Unless, of course, it is Tony G who goes out, but I'm sure he finds sitting next to himself a pleasure. Certainly one conversation I wouldn't normally want to listen to. Got to say, though, Tony has calmed down a bit. Certainly in this tournament, on his best behaviour at Australia's premier casino. The biggest in the southern hemisphere, I believe. 9s for Tony G. 2 pair. Only 1 heart for Dan Smith. And Hashem has no business being there and decides to get out of the way.
You start with like 200?
With the time ticking down, Dan Smith does call. Will that king scare off Tony G? Well, he's going to give him a free card if he wants one. Or can Dan Smith exploit what he might see as weakness in that check? He decides to have a free one. He's not going to like it particularly, but it is another overcard. Dan Smith using his time button to give himself an extra few seconds of agonising over this one. He can really only beat a bluff. Would you trust Tony G?
3, 2, 1, 4.
He allows himself to be folded out.
That's right.
Tony G did not have a straight.
Is it good?
We don't have a clock visible. We don't have a clock visible. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
Smith
that's what confused you?
folding the King 10 in early position. Tony getting busy with the suited near connectors, also Gus Hansen. Smirnoff has played his aces with firm determination,
We should keep it in the family.
and even though he's out of position, he's doing it once again. He's hit middle pair, nothing black for him though. And it's an up and down draw for Tony G. A 4 or a 9 gives him a straight.
The bet is 33,000.
It's a sort of Gus Hansen looking flop. This may be enough to get Smirnoff to abandon ship. No, he calls with middle pair. Tony will love the value he's getting here to hit his straight. Well, he hasn't made it yet. That gives a gut shot draw to Smirnoff as well. We know, of course, that hitting that 4 would be a disaster for him, because Tony would make his straight, and it would be a bigger one. Gus really only has the power of personality to play with here. Any dreams of a backdoor flush have gone. He's merely got overcards.
5, 4, 3, 2.
So, check, check, check. And in the end, Smirnoff's ace is good. Everybody else has utterly whiffed at the 5 cards in the middle. And just Hansen to decide whether he can steal this from them with Queen High. Not this time. So Smirnoff will be the one who pulls in just over 150,000 chips.
No pair. Come on, guys. Let's not be shy.
5, S5.
You know, 7 deuce is so underrated.
Hashem saying that 7 deuce is underrated. Easy when you've won a main series with 7-3. Still 5 players here. One of them will leave with nothing. We approach the 8-hour mark. We started with 22 players, down to 5. This is the money bubble. Mikhail Smirnoff has been bowled and the beneficiary of some decent luck. Raises with Jack 10. Hashem's all over him with Ace 10. But how cruel will these 3 cards be? Hashem picks up a draw of the wheel. Smirnoff has diddly. He checks. Hashem checks. King changes nothing except Mikhail Smirnoff's determination to have a go at it. Hashem is a canny operator, and he won't be bluffed that easily. That 3rd heart may make it slightly harder for him to call a hefty bet with a bare ace high. Five different cards in the middle. The chances are Smirnoff can have one of them. And the fact that these players only have a few seconds to make their decision can affect the way they play. Normally they could cogitate and work out all the possible permutations, go through all the hands they've played against this player.
3.
But here it is very much allegro.
Like you can't say wait. Once the spot goes, even with me, right? It's 0, that's it. The hand there.
Tony G putting in his tuppence worth about how quickly players should fold once that clock has beeped down to 0.
I think the same.
Nice to see him talking again. He's got the computer hand, Queen 7 on the button, doesn't want to play. King 5 off. Well, when you're Gus Hansen, that's as good as any.
Raise 16.5 total.
He really is relentless, really pouring the pressure on.
1, 2, 3, 4, 15, 360.
Smirnoff asking him for a chip count, which earns him a beady glare from the Dane.
Cool.
He makes the call. Little scratch at the forehead. Read into that what you may. Top pair for Hansen. Gut shot draw for Smirnoff. He'd need the queen. Does he want to pay 22,000 of those hard-earned chips to find the lady?
Cool.
Indeed he does.
Have another water.
King's up for Gus. Playing for over $1 million. Gus manages to make it look as unstressful as a walk in the park.
44.5.
Gus with kicker problems if he puts Smirnoff on another king.
Cool.
He decides to see the river. Certainly hasn't helped his kicker issues.
Check.
And he checks down. This could be check call if it's cheap enough. But it goes check check instead.
2 pair. Kings and 9s.
And Gus relieved to rake in a decent little pot. Gus looking a little tired perhaps. We've been playing for over 8 hours. Dan Smith has played very few hands, maybe why he's looking a little bit more refreshed than the others, or perhaps it's just his youth compared to some fairly old stagers in terms of the poker world. A few grey hairs out there, a bit of salt and pepper on the temples.
Seven.
2 queens for Smirnoff. Not much for Hashem.
Raise 21 total.
Joe used to be a chiropractor or osteopath. Certainly putting the pain on Smirnoff here. Unfortunately for him, Smirnoff does have top pair. Now Joe picks up a piece of this. Will that quick check from Smirnoff induce another run at it?
Cool.
And the check was quick, but so was the call.
Check.
Check, check.
Pair of 9s. Pair of queens.
And Hashem sees the bad news. But in terms of this final table, relatively inexpensive. Remember, one of these players goes home with nothing, and it is a long, long ride for such a short slide. Nearly 9 hours of intensive poker against some of the best in the world.
Raise 15.
Smirnoff bully boy with 4-3, but he has run into a genuine hand from Hashem.
Raise.
Pot limit before the flop, remember, so
Fold.
they can't be shoving all in unless they're extremely short stacked.
Fold.
Tony not priced in, so we're heads up for this one. Smirnoff at least have live cards. Gus going for a Pittsburgh spread. Just shoving the chips in a big old pile. The dealer may make him tidy them up, because it makes it rather hard for other people to guess how many he's got.
Total 90.
Raise to 90 total.
Big hand, huh?
Well, they are live cards. They don't add up to 8, so I don't suppose you could call it a big hand. This is pressure poker from Smirnoff. Hashem decides not to re-raise, just to see a flop and see how the land lies. Well, he's picked up a gut shot, indeed the 10. All black in the middle, both our players with red cards. Hashem
20 seconds.
extends his odds of winning this one. But this Russian Smirnoff has not been afraid to pull the trigger.
80,000.
And the one card Hashem probably didn't want to see was a king. Only 20 seconds. He has a few chips behind, even if he folds. But his instincts may be telling him this Russian can't always have it. He lives to fight another day and chalk yet another one up to the impressive Mikhail Smirnoff.
He's not like Ralph Perry. King Jack, and he's playing 3-4.
Blinds 3 and 6.
Qualifying with that.
Fold. Raise 15.
Another ace for Joe Hashem.
Fold.
My previous hand I had pair of 7-6 like 7.
Gus with the 6-3 in lozenges. Decides to call. Once again, Hashem up against low cards. This time he has flop top pair with a great kicker. And some just bottom pair. And some running straight and flush opportunities. 20,000. Gus has plenty of chips.
Fold.
And he considers seeing another one. It's worked out well for him. He's got an up and down straight draw and a diamond draw now.
Check.
Hashem checks. And Hashem will win this one.
$27,000.
27,000. Gus with just a pair of 3s
Call.
decides to make the call.
No rates with an ace.
Well, that earned some information and showed that he is prepared to call if he thinks someone's bluffing. All valuable things to have inside the other players' heads, as if they weren't bamboozled by him enough already. Mikhail Smirnoff. Ace Queen offsuit. Tough looking customer, isn't he? Something rather sort of 70s about him. With those shades.
Raise 15 total.
Whereas Dan Smith looks straight out of the 90s, a Beastie Boys video. Hasn't seen a lot of action at this final table. $15. Gus already in the big blind with very playable cards.
Call.
He's tidied up his chips and he makes the call.
3 players.
Well, all hearts. Dan Smith has flopped
Check.
a flush.
$18.5.
18-5. Now, Smith has played fewer hands than probably anyone at this final table.
Call. Call.
But Gus, with middle pair, gives him scant respect.
Check.
Slows down a bit now. No way Smith can lose, and really no way Smith can fold. It's just a question of how much he can extract from Gus.
36.5.
Now, Gus was sort of floating at it with middle pair, but there's really no way he can call here. It's a raise or a fold. We know that a raise is going to get re-raised.
Call.
Well, what do I know? Gus Hansen has just called with the pair of fives.
Check.
Dan Smith will be encouraged by the fact that he got a call, and now be looking to make this a bumper payday. Just a little bit more than last time. Well, 77. There's nearly 250 in the middle. We saw Gus call with a low pair. Not this time. And score one to young Dan Smith.
Give us a nub. It's on his t-shirt. Tell us what's the deal with the nubs.
You understand the high five, right?
Yep.
Well, this is the new and improved version of the high five for a number of reasons. More hygienic, more you have more versatility. You can do it by yourself if you need to. If I didn't have coffee, I could put on a little bit of a nub solo, but unfortunately, I'm not going to try to scald you with this.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yep.
Wise advice. Tony G phoning a friend on his mobile. And Dan Smith looking down at fairly friendly cards, five-handed, ace-5, but he's first to act. Doesn't fancy that position.
Call.
And now we're round to Gus Hansen,
Raise.
who's
22.
been typically aggressive and adventurous throughout this tournament, but this is very much the rock he has crashed against. I don't mean to say that Smirnoff is a tight player necessarily, but he has certainly been destructive to Gus's ambitions. He makes the call,
Heads up.
and he has the advantage once again.
Check.
Both of them whiff at that flop.
Check.
Still nothing for anybody.
25.
Smirnoff's 10 kicker puts him in the
Call.
first position. And it just does more than that now. Gives him a pair. Not that he necessarily needed it. He checks. Can he get Gus to have a pop at this one? If he does, and Smirnoff calls, Gus will be getting slightly sick of the side of him. Having him on his left is really not suiting the great down at the moment.
51.
Chips are ready. They go out there.
I'm a jack.
Grab tens.
Gus will be logging all this away for future reference. Still has a decent amount of chips. Remember, the next player out gets nothing. Everybody else is going to be rich, or in the cases of these gentlemen, even richer. Young Dan Smith. Well, there's some whole cards to make your fortune with. Ace King suited, Group 1 hand.
Raise 19.
And the man with the New York cap raises it up. Now here's a classic situation. Ace King against Jack Jack.
38 more.
This one could get messy for someone.
Raise to 115.
Tony G no longer in love with his jacks. He's got to suspect he's at the very least up against Ace King, Ace Queen, in which case he's only a very marginal favourite. Could be worse, of course. Queens, Kings or Aces, and he's a 4-to-1 dog.
10 seconds.
It's a big money decision, and quite rightly he gives himself a little bit more time. We are on the bubble. Jacks against Ace King. Pressure on Tony G. Dan Smith has played pretty tight. Certainly no shame if Tony G were to fold this. But he's called. And he will hate the side of that ace.
Seconds. 46.
46,000, and that should suggest to Tony G that Dan Smith is committed here. It's a small bet into such a large pot,
10 seconds.
which again only makes it seem more threatening, more like a worm on the end of a hook. Tony G rightly uses his extra time breaker. If he does call and lose, he'll bubble and go home with nothing.
20 seconds.
Huge pressure. And he folds. Great decision there by Tony. He gets away from it, so still 5 players left. A first prize of over 1 million Aussie dollars. It could be anyone. But the favourite at the moment, very much the Russian Mikhail Smirnov. Our other 4 thoroughbred horses are very much looking even.
That's it from us for tonight, but it's certainly not over, as someone still needs to win that first place prize of over $1 million. Join us next time as the action continues in the Aussie Millions $100,000 Challenge.